Hey guys, James here, how you doing? So time is now up for the short story contest. Thank you very much to everybody who's taken part. There were 4 entries by 3 different users and I'll be linking to their channels down below, so check them out and subscribe if you like their stuff. So I will be playing the entries in just a moment, and after you've finished listening, click on the appropriate link and follow the instructions to cast your vote. So without further ado then, let's get on with the show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 800. Are those words I've said or numbers? Yes, I am James. He is interested in hearing a story that contains at least 800 words. One can't do what one wills to do, at least I've been told. So in this, I will tell you a story of a conjuncture, and it's true. It's called I Had a Dream. I'm not just doing this to win a prize or waste words, that is at least 100 just then. Alright then. Exactly 100 words, if I include this. There you go. Waking up, remembering, graduating with a master's in biology with emphasis in microorganisms and molecular structures for diagnostics and phage composition, there he was, a 25-year-old kid whose name, if I remember correctly, is Jesus Sands. This was his world, a graduate and an E7 in the Air Force. To appease this mom, he would become what she always wanted for him, a DR suffix in front of his name. Dr. Jesus Sands. A nice ring to it. Mr. Sands, parting after his graduation, hit the hay and had this vivid dream. A patient, pacing back and forth. You may want to sit down for this. I have some good news and bad news. First, the good news. Oh no, thought Mrs. Wiskin, an attractive girl with appearances of Scarlett Johansson. This doctor is going to tell me that I'm pregnant. Please sit down, Mrs. Wiskin. Oh, don't sit like that. It's bad for your posture. According to this test, you have early on stage ankylosing spondylitis. That's spine arthritis to you, and it will hurt for the rest of your life. You will end up visiting some holistic joke of a doctor who will pretend to know chiropractics. You will have back problems for at least 50 years. 30. According to your blood test, you also have type 2 diabetes. Oh boy, how could I forget that? You look fit, but looks can be deceiving. The girl who I went out with last night appeared to be a girl, but oh boy, what's my face red. And every time you go to this doctor, you will say that you haven't been taking your medicine and you haven't been practicing your core exercises he recommended. And every visit will cost you hundreds of dollars. And people say holistic medicine is a joke. So sit correctly if you wish to avoid that. Oh, and it says here that you haven't had sex for a while? Oh, Mrs. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. You are an attractive woman. I have no idea why your husband doesn't find you attractive anymore, and he appears to be looking around too, because according to your husband, you're a whiny sack of awkward, horrible sex. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that I talked to your husband last night. I didn't want to, but he insisted. He was whining and crying. I can see why sex with him would be horrible. Oh yes, last night he came to the hospital with an abdominal wound. He kept yelling, "Call my wife, call my wife." Oh, by the way, in street terms, an abdominal wound is called a gut shot. Apparently, a pimp shot him. Because your husband insisted that he had a coupon for sex? I hadn't heard of that, but this will be a good thing. They do charge an arm and a leg, and by the time you finish paying, you end up with an upset stump. Oh, sorry. How insensitive of me. My husband's what? Said Mrs. Wiskin. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that is the reason we called you. Your husband was admitted with an extreme abdominal pain. I deducted from this because he was putting pressure in his stomach and there was a lot of blood escaping from that huge cavity. There was no time for anesthetics and he was bleeding all over the place. And the nurses were getting angry because they just cleaned. Anyway, I started probing around your husband's stomach and he was screaming, a strong indicator that I was in the right place. It was getting really messy. A real freaking mess. Pardon my French. A lot of intestines. What you might call guts. Anyway, your husband is screaming. I'm looking at his intestines. Boy, I never knew we had that many. Anyway, so there I was, probing, maneuvering organs from one place to the next. Then I noticed this round-shaped organ. I had to read up on it. Medical school didn't spend a lot of time on this precarious organ, so I took it out. I didn't find it in any of my medical reference books, so I figured he didn't need it, and I was pressed for time, mind you. Your husband stopped moving for a while, but we shocked him back up. and fixed them. But the nurse came back and said he had no medical insurance. That's the bad news, by the way. So I tried to explain to my medical students, oh, where are my manners? This is a teaching hospital. I forgot to mention that. Anyway, this is why you're here. He needs to be sewn back up, and it's a lot of money to do that, and our insurance is uppity about that, you understand. So I searched for his last name. The records indicated that he's rich and married, so we called you. Well, not just because you're my patient, and not because I wanted to kill two birds with one stone. I didn't even know you were married, Mrs. Wiskind. And to a Rockefeller, no less. Wow. Anyway, it's going to be about $150,000. The good news is he's doing better, but he is losing a lot of blood, and his stomach's still open and all. But type O positive we have aplenty, so no worries, we got you covered. But he seems to be having a lot of cardiac arrest. No idea why. Wait, what? This is not your husband? Your husband is who? Oh well, then it appears I have some good news. No, wait. According to my records, it's bad. It's all bad. Mrs. Witzkin? Are you okay? Nurse, quick! Defibrillator, stat! Oh crap, I have the wrong file.
I am old. My name is Irius. I like watching animals when I am not sure exactly what they are doing. And this I recall. There was once a year when nothing grew, and we went in search of food. It was hard, with the constant burning sunlight in the daytime, but the freezing cold at night, as we made our way through the deserts and the swamps. 3 of us died. Blenner died from scurvy. He'd liked raindrops even when there weren't any. Garmer died of thirst. He had been fond of picking apples straight off the tree and biting into them. Back when apples had still grown where we lived, they didn't anymore, of course. Thema died of something, and we knew little about him. We feel guilty now how little we knew, but he'd kept himself to himself very much. We wondered if we could ask the help of the Scusian kingdom, but for their king and our king, and had an argument back when little is known about. We think it was over something. It had once been agreed that the only exchanges that would ever occur between us till the end of time would be born of cannon fire. Camping on the edge of the Scusian settlement, we made best of what we had. On the next day, one of us would enter, someone chosen, and humbly request their help. It was rumoured, by some, that we were spied upon. In a park just by the edge of the settlement was a statue of their great Hydran, the man of the living flame. It dated back 1,000 years and was guarded by 3. I imagine one of them liked thinking about fish, another looking at things, and another simply humming to himself. We cannot be sure though. We dreamt of the days of dinner, and were we being watched? In the early hours of the morning there was panic as we heard the sound of cannon fire. The skies seemed to combust. Projectiles were headed towards us, for certain. A party of many, led by Adris, a keen card player, were sent out to defile the statue, killing the guards if necessary. Hours later, curiosity overcame some of our starving tribe, who dared approach the objects we had run from. They were like sacks, but blackened, with containers inside. The potatoes were wondrous, as were the peas and the carrots. There was even rice and canteens of clean water in which to boil it. You could say we had the best meal of our lives. Or you might not.
It's called No More Running. Loud bursts of laughter woke Danielle up tentatively from her sleeping. Her eyes blinked open, and when she gained enough consciousness, she jumped, stunned to see she wasn't in her room. She squinted, letting her eyes become accustomed to her pitch-black surroundings. She got off of the cold, bare floor, her body aching, and carefully felt until her hand grazed the nearest wall. She made her way around the whole room and used her heightened senses to examine it. She didn't trip on any furniture, a bed, or even a lamp. She seemed to be in a tiny, barren brick room with black drapes covering the windows. She lifted one of the drapes to look out, but all she saw outside was more darkness. She felt anxiety rise in her throat. She took a few deep breaths before feeling her way to the part of the wall where she believed she had felt a door. She found the doorknob and turned it. The door unexpectedly swung wide open. Light poured into the room, and the sounds of the laughter were no longer muffled. Soft music was also playing in the background, playing in time to the hammering of her heart. She peered out the door down either side of the dimly lit hallway. She cautiously and quietly stepped out and followed the noises. They got louder, and they reached their crescendo when she turned a corner into a big, ornate room of statues, old paintings of women, elegant furniture, and long purple curtains. She didn't know why she noticed this first, and not the three beautiful women dressed in identical long black dresses. Lace traced against the skin above their breasts, and the sight alone made her want to walk the other way. Everything happened at once. She turned to leave the room, but the girls had noticed her entrance and moved towards her, all of them gliding along the floor as if they were ghostly apparitions. She looked back at them and thought she saw two of them holding hands while in pursuit, but when she looked back, they weren't anymore. Maybe it was for her imagination. She didn't know and didn't care. She just wanted to get away from them, their beauty, their confidence, their unholy happiness. Her heartbeat quickened, and when she reached the door, just as she thought she had the drop on them, they caught up to her and grabbed her. She pulled, but their grip on her was cement. It was frightening yet unbearably sensual. She internally protested the hands she felt on her hip bone, but couldn't say anything aloud. She was mute in their presence. "Come on, sweets, there's nothing to fear." "Yeah, come join the festivities," the second woman said and spun her around. She pulled her close, and as much as Danielle pushed her away, the girl's hold over her was not going nowhere. She looked in her eyes as Danielle struggled and failed to look away. "You can't run from it forever," the third girl said before she and the other girl walked away. The brunette with the big brown eyes was still holding her. The unnamed woman pulled away and walked towards another nearby room that was bigger, much more beautiful, and the light shining from the room reminded her of lights that most would describe heaven as having. She looked over her shoulder, a half smile playing on her lips, then leaned against the doorway. The lights radiating from the room illuminated her. She was stunning, but Danielle continued to hesitate. Anxiety rose in her once again. She gave Danielle a look that read as somewhere on a spectrum between lust and bemusement. She studied her face expectantly, and it made Danielle very uncomfortable. She appeared so confident, standing there with her arms folded, her head rested against the door frame, and strands of smooth, straight hair falling across her youthful face. She continued her walk into the room, and Danielle just stood there watching. She had to make a decision. Stay with this beautiful woman, if only for a night, or leave and not look back. She was stricken with horror by both choices. It felt as if regret was already washing over her in waves. She knew deep down what her choice would be before she even thought of it. What her response always was. She ran. She walked down the hall, and a chill went over her as she entered the large, lush room again, music still playing, rattling her nerves, and briskly made her way to the door. The other two girls lounging on the leather sofa gave her identical looks of pity. They made no move to stop her. They simply continued to watch on. As she placed her hand on the doorknob, she opened it and stepped into the cold, damp darkness waiting for her. Danielle awoke to an alarm, cold sweats, and reality. She groggily turned the clock radio off and sat up. "Of course I would have that dream," she said aloud to no one in particular, and got some clean, dry clothes to change into. She pulled her hair back into a messy bun, glancing at a picture of her and her friend Rebecca. She came to an abrupt decision, one she should have made a year ago, that had become even more necessary recently. She picked up her cell phone and dialed. "Hello?" "Hey, Rebecca," she responded. A sense of relief and determination pushed her forward. She was making the right decision, and she knew it instinctually. More than anything she had ever known, had to decide, or had to attempt. And in that moment the puzzle pieces came together, and she didn't care what the outcome would be. She just had to do this for her own good. No more running. "We need to talk about the other day." I'll be right over.
Hey Mom, I can do this. The look of disdain in Mama Tenoch's face said it all. Young Jesus playing in the dirt, just like his ancestors did. But Mama was not impressed. Mama looked at young Jesus. You were always a disappointment. She grabbed the gun with contempt and shot herself. Little Jesus started to scream but couldn't. He tried to get up but froze. He was scared. Mama is gone now. He was always a disappointment for her. He tried to muster the courage to get up and reach her, but as soon as he did, Mama Tenoch was just out of reach. He closed his eyes and yelled, "No noise." He turned around and Mama Tenoch was behind him, oozing blood, brain matter, and maggots from that huge cavity. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. That is when he woke up, covered in sweat, sticky sheets, with an erection protruding from them. He turned around. His grandma was looking at him now, 30 years old, still living at home. Jesus didn't care. He loved his grandma. Sure, she's been dead for about 2 weeks now, but she still looks good, and she always did. Grandma was indeed a model. Flowing blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, pouty lips, high cheekbones, long legs, large breasts, and a slimish waist. She was perfection, a true Mayan goddess. Mama Tenoch was not bad either, same genes. People always call them sisters. They never believed that Grandma was of course Grandma, but Grandma had an arrogant tilt to her head, a superior glide, even as she walked, swaying her hips back and forth, even in her old age. She was always perfection. Grandma used to call me her little angel. Always had a strong connection with her. She accepted who Jesus was, who Jesus became. The man, the scholar. She didn't mind him playing in the dirt either. She liked to play too. Mama did as well, but for some reason, he could never do right by her. But he fell in love with Grandma. Every time they played in the dirt, she would always say, "Remember your roots, practice them, and you will never forget them. This is how our people live on." He's been thinking about that for days now. Even now, as he tastes his grandma. She's so lovely, with a hint of salt and vinegar. The maggots taste just as sweet. He loved tasting his grandma. She's the best woman he ever had. No one compares, not even his mom. Even though she died at 95 years old, she never lost her figure or her looks. Even when Mama Tenoch cursed the day he was born because she lost her figure, Mama Tenoch always made him feel inferior. Still though, it wasn't his fault that his mom killed herself. She couldn't take him anymore, playing in the dirt, always insulting him. "You're a waste of time, you never do it right." Mama Tenoch said it sickened her to death, and it finally did. Jesus still felt a little guilty about that, but Mama Tenoch never ever loved him. Even as they played in the dirt together, she always criticized him. He was stupid, I wasn't able to do it right. It got old. It's about 3:30 now, it's almost time. 15 minutes to drive to the city, even living in the woods. Thanks to his ancestors, he lived in such a secluded area. He loved it. He picked up his date, drove back home. He was getting antsy now. It's almost time to play. It's been 2 weeks since he played in the dirt. He missed this. 4 o'clock now. He didn't waste any time. She looked so delicious. He ripped her clothes off and disappeared inside her in seconds. With all the violent intent and passion into her puckered anus, she moaned for more. He was bent on erotomaniacal intent to give her all that he was. She dug her nails deep inside his buttocks. As he thrust grew stronger, she dug deeper. He could feel blood trickling down his thighs. He hated how much he adored this. He took himself out of her, turned her around, and tasted his sweat in reverse 69 passions. Tasting everything that she was, he had to peel her out of him. There's just so much throat massage you could actually stand before you pop. He turned her around. Her sex was slopping wet inside her once again, while sucking her nipples. Oh yes, God, that's good, she screamed as electrical current ran down her spine and collapsed on the floor. Jesus kissed her. He never finished, so he grabbed her neck and twisted it. She died in pleasure. 30 minutes. Grandma would be pleased. Jesus grabbed the shovel and waited until 5 and began the ritual. Each child was waiting. 2 weeks later, he would get to play in the dirt once more. The flies were already circling. Maggots could be seen, feasting. He grabbed Grandma, wheeled her down to the rituals of the yard. She always loved to see this. Jesus grabbed the obsidian prismatic blade, made small cuts on his penis, grabbed a handful of maggots, opened up his urethral orifice, and shoved them in. With a handful of maggots still, the ritual began. Put the remaining maggots inside of Grandma and began to copulate. the new life began to feed. There was love in her eyes still. Mama Tenoch would always tell him the maggots were never quite right. She felt them, but Grandma was always kinder. Maggots would always make Mama Tenoch indifferent. As soon as the maggots entered Mom, nothing would happen. The ritual was never complete if both parties didn't bleed, a sign of true disrespect to the gods. The practice was eons old. Bloodletting, a sign of respect to the gods. If the ritual was successful, fertile soil of great bounty always made you young, healthy, beautiful. The gods had their sacrifice, and Jesus, well, he had fertile land. Our vegetables and fruits are bought by major organic stores. The best in the land. The best that California has to offer. Grandma was always proud of that.
So those were the 4 entries. Thanks for watching. Now time to cast your votes then, so make sure your annotations are on and click on one of the pictures above to vote for your favourite story. Thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.